when life appears ordinary on the surface, yet something unseen is taking place beneath it. Doors close without explanation, delays arrive without warning, and paths you once trusted suddenly disappear. You may think you are being denied, when in truth you are being guarded. What feels like silence is not always absence. Sometimes it is the quiet movement of divine protection. There are dangers the human eye cannot recognize, and battles the human mind cannot predict. Yet the hand of God is not limited by what we understand. He works in hidden places, arranging what we cannot arrange, and shielding us from what we were never meant to carry. Like the reflective depth often found in C.S. Lewis, this message leans into the idea that the unseen world is not empty. It is active. The visible story is only part of the greater one being written. You stood before that door with hope in your hands. You knocked with prayer, effort, patience, and expectation. You believed it would open because nothing in you felt ready, yet it remained shut. No answer came. No explanation arrived. Only silence. Only confusion. Only the uncomfortable feeling that something precious had been taken from you. But there is a thought worth holding carefully. What if the closed door was never punishment? What if it was protection dressed in disappointment? Human beings are creatures of sight. We trust what we can measure. We call something good because it appears bright and promising. We call something bad because it hurts or refuses us. Yet the strange mystery of faith is that heaven often works in reverse. The thing that wounds our expectation may be the very thing preserving our future. Imagine a traveler standing before a road hidden by morning fog. He sees only a narrow distance ahead and judges the path by what little is visible. But the one who watches from the mountain sees the broken bridge beyond the mist. The traveler calls the delay cruel. The watcher calls it mercy. So many people penned years grieving doors that never opened. The opportunity vanished. The relationship ended. The offer disappeared. The invitation never came. They return in memory again and again, wondering what they lost. Yet there are moments when time itself becomes a revelation. Months later, years later, they discover truths once hidden. The road they desired led towards sorrow. The person they trusted carried storms within them. The success they chased would have demanded pieces of their soul they were never meant to surrender. The difficulty is this: protection rarely announces itself. Danger often does not arrive with thunder. It comes quietly. It wears attractive faces. It speaks gentle words. It promises quick victories. The peril that most threatens a person is not always the one that terrifies them. Sometimes it is the one that fascinates them. C.S. Lewis often explored the thought that reality is deeper than what lies before our eyes. The visible world is only part of a larger story. The same may be true of your disappointment. The closed door may belong to a chapter you cannot yet read. You stand inside one page while God holds the whole book. Perhaps that job would have taken more than your energy. Perhaps it would have stolen peace from your home. Perhaps that friendship would have slowly reshaped your character. Perhaps that move, that dream, that perfect opportunity carried hidden weight beneath its beauty. There is a peculiar kindness in divine refusal. It feels severe at first because it opposes our desire. We are certain we know what blessing looks like. We draw it with our own hands and ask heaven to sign its name beneath it. Yet sometimes the answer is no, not because God wishes less for us, but because he sees more than us. Think of a child reaching toward a flame. The child sees light and warmth. The parent sees pain. If the hand is stopped, the child may cry at the interruption, never understanding that love often appears first as resistance. AY still carry the ache of something that never happened. A future you planned. A dream you named. A door you touched but never entered. And perhaps you have called it loss every day since. But hidden within that sorrow may be an unseen rescue, a quiet act of mercy moving behind the curtain while you stood wondering why everything had gone silent. The rejection may not have been the end of your path. It may have been the moment your path was gently turned away from what your eyes could not see, and toward what your heart has not yet discovered. Toward what your heart has not yet discovered. And that is where faith becomes difficult, because it asks us to trust not only what God gives, but also what he prevents. There are dangers that never introduce themselves. They do not arrive with warning signs or shadows cast across the road. They move quietly through ordinary moments. A conversation that seems harmless. An opportunity that appears perfect. A decision made in confidence. We often Imagine danger as something obvious, yet some of the deepest wounds begin wrapped in beauty. God sees the story before it unfolds. He stands where tomorrow already exists. What is hidden from you is not hidden from Him. The storm that waits beyond the horizon is already known. The betrayal not yet spoken is already heard. The burden not yet carried is already measured. This thought can feel both comforting and unsettling. Comforting because you are not abandoned. Unsettling because it means many of the events that frustrate you may be connected to mercies you cannot recognize. You may have missed the train and called it bad luck. You may have arrived late and blamed yourself. You may have watched plans collapse in a single afternoon and believed everything was falling apart. Yet there are moments when what appears to be disorder is actually a hand rearranging events beyond your understanding. The human heart has a strange habit. It asks, "Why did this happen to me?" but rarely asks, "What was I spared from?" We count visible losses while remaining blind to invisible rescues. We mourn the battles we fought but never consider the battles that never reached us. Some victories leave no evidence because they happen in secret places. Imagine a castle standing through the night while enemies move in the darkness beyond its walls. The people inside sleep peacefully, never knowing how many dangers were turned away before dawn. They wake believing nothing happened. Yet much happened. They simply did not see it. Perhaps your life has known such nights. Perhaps there were decisions you almost made but somehow delayed. Perhaps there were people you nearly trusted but circumstances changed. Perhaps there were roads you intended to walk until something interrupted your plans. At the time it felt inconvenient. Now imagine that interruption was not random at all. What if heaven stepped quietly between you and something your eyes would have welcomed but your soul would have regretted? There is humility in accepting that our vision is small. We see moments, God sees consequences. We see beginnings, God sees endings. We see open fields, God sees hidden cliffs. This does not mean every hardship is pleasant or every disappointment easy. Protection itself can hurt. A hand pulling you away from danger may still feel forceful. Rescue is not always gentle in appearance. Sometimes it arrives as delay, sometimes as confusion, sometimes as the painful collapse of a plan you loved. And because we do not see the danger, we mistake the rescue. C.S. Lewis once explored the idea that there are realities greater than human sight, worlds layered beneath the ordinary, truths moving quietly beneath familiar surfaces. In much the same way, divine protection may not announce itself with miracles that shake mountains. It may move through the unnoticed details of daily life. A cancelled meeting, an unanswered message, a changed direction, a door locked at the exact moment you wished it open. The tragedy is not that we fail to understand these moments immediately. The tragedy is that we sometimes resent the very mercy protecting us. You may be standing in such a moment now, looking at a broken expectation, holding confusion in your hands, wondering why God allowed your plans to dissolve. Yet somewhere beyond the edge of your sight, there may be dangers already past, sorrows already avoided, losses already prevented, not because you were wiser than others, not because you saw further, but because the one guiding you saw what you could not, and moved before the threat ever reached your door, And still, there are seasons when protection does not feel like rescue at all. It feels like waiting. Waiting is one of the hardest experiences the human spirit can endure because it places us between desire and fulfillment. We stand in the middle of unfinished prayers, unfinished dreams, unfinished answers. We look at and see nothing moving. We look behind and wonder why we ever left where we were. This is where many hearts grow weary, not in the storm itself, but in the pause that follows it. You expected progress, yet life became still. You expected movement, yet everything slowed. The plans that seemed ready suddenly halted. The opportunity drifted away. The answer never arrived. And quietly a question formed inside you. Why is nothing happening? But perhaps something is happening. Perhaps the delay itself is the work. Human beings often think protection must look immediate and dramatic. We imagine a hand pulling us away at the final second. Yet sometimes protection arrives earlier than danger. It appears as a season of waiting that keeps us from arriving too soon. There is a peculiar mercy in being late to what is not ready for you. A fruit taken before its time may appear complete, yet its sweetness has not formed. A house built too quickly may stand beautifully while weakness hides inside the walls. Even the strongest trees spend years growing where no one applauds them. Creation itself seems to whisper the same lesson. What lasts is often prepared in silence. The difficulty is that silence feels empty to us. We measure progress by visible movement. If doors open, we believe God is near. If opportunities increase, we feel chosen. But when nothing changes, we fear abandonment. We interpret stillness as absence. Yet some of the greatest works happen underground. The seed disappears before it rises. Roots deepen before branches spread. The river carves stone while remaining unseen. Perhaps your delay is not a sign that heaven has forgotten you. Perhaps it is the hidden room where protection is being shaped. Imagine arriving early to a bridge still under construction. The traveler complains because he cannot cross. He grows impatient and calls the delay unfair. But the delay is not the danger. Crossing too soon is. How many moments in life carry this mist? Hurry. The relationship that moves slowly. The dream that refused to arrive. The door that remained closed month after month. The answer that stayed hidden. We grieve the time lost, never realizing time itself may be the gift. C.S. Lewis often wrote with the understanding that the visible world is not the whole story. Beneath the ordinary lies a deeper order, one not easily recognized by hurried eyes. The same may be true of waiting. What appears motionless may actually be preparation. God does not merely protect us from events. Sometimes He protects us from timing. A blessing at the wrong hour can become a burden. Success before maturity can become ruin. Access without wisdom can become destruction. The thing you desire most may not be wrong. It may simply belong to another season. And so heaven delays, not to deny, not to punish, but to preserve. Yet preservation rarely feels noble while you are living through it. It feels frustrating. It feels lonely. It feels like the state, ding outside while others move ahead. You watch people pass through doors you once prayed for. You see lives advancing while yours seems paused. And slowly envy begins to whisper that you have been forgotten. But comparison cannot see hidden battles. You do not know what others carry. You do not know what was required of them. And you do not know what God is keeping from you because you are not yet meant to bear it. There may come a day when you look back on this waiting season and realize it was never empty. It was filled with unseen mercies. The delay that angered you kept you from rushing into sorrow. The silence that troubled you created space for wisdom. The pause that seemed unbearable quietly turned your steps away from a path you would later thank God for never allowing. And perhaps that is the strangest mystery of all. Not the battles we survived, but the battles we never knew existed. Human beings remember visible victories. We remember the storm we endured, the sorrow we overcame, the mountain we climbed. We speak of the moments that tested us because they left marks upon our lives. But there may be another kind of victory, quieter and far more hidden, the conflict that never reached you because it was stopped before it began. You never fought it. You never saw it. You never even knew it had your name upon it. Yet somehow it passed by. There is something humbling in that thought. We like to imagine ourselves as the heroes of every story. We believe our strength carried us, our wisdom protected us, our decisions saved us. But what of the dangers removed before our courage was ever needed? What of the sorrows intercepted before our prayers even formed? How much of your life has been preserved by battles fought beyond your sight? Imagine a traveler walking through a forest at night. The path seems peaceful, the air is still, nothing appears unusual. He reaches the other side believing that our journey was easy. What he does not know is that unseen eyes watched from the darkness, and unseen forces kept them distant. He remembers only the calm. He never sees the conflict. Perhaps many of us live this way. We call a season ordinary because nothing dramatic happened. We say, it was just another year. Yet perhaps heaven would tell a different story. Perhaps that year contained wars you never witnessed, griefs that almost found you, doors that nearly opened in the wrong direction. Protection leaves little evidence. It rarely writes its name across the sky. The danger removed in silence often receives no gratitude because no one knows it existed. This is why faith asks for trust beyond memory. You cannot thank God only for what you understand. You must sometimes thank Him for what remained hidden. There may have been friendships that never formed because they would have slowly darkened your spirit. Opportunities that disappeared because success within them would have cost too much. Places you never reached because sorrow waited there ahead of schedule. The remarkable thing is that we often mourn these absences. We stand before what never happened and call it loss. But absence is not always emptiness. Sometimes it is rescue. C.S. Lewis wrote with a sense that the world seen by human eyes is only the edge of a deeper reality. In that spirit, consider this. Your visible life may be surrounded by invisible mercy. The ordinary morning, the delayed answer, the altered planties may carry more meaning than you realize. You wake up believing the day belongs entirely to chance. Yet perhaps there are quiet movements taking place around you. A step redirected, a temptation weakened, a danger delayed, a burden removed. Not every victory arrives with applause. Some arrive so gently that they pass unnoticed. And because they pass unnoticed, we begin to believe nothing is happening. That belief is dangerous. It creates loneliness inside the soul. It means aches people think they walk unguarded through life. It convinces them that heaven speaks only through dramatic signs while ignoring the countless small mercies scattered across ordinary days. But the hidden battle may be the greater miracle. Not the storm calmed after it arrived. The storm turned away before it formed. Not the wound healed after it appeared. The wound prevented before it touched you. Not the enemy defeated in front of your eyes. The enemy that never reached the gate. You may never know every moment you were protected. The full story may remain beyond this life. Perhaps only in eternity will people discover how many unseen victories stood quietly behind their ordinary days. How many disasters never unfolded. How many losses never arrived. How many tears were spared. And how many times the hand of God moved through the unseen places while they walked forward, believing nothing at all was happening. While they walked forward, believing nothing at all was happening. NG. And yet, silence is not emptiness. It only feels that way when we expect God to speak in the language of noise. There are seasons where the divine presence does not announce itself with change or interruption, but with quiet endurance in the background of your life, like a steady hand holding something together that would otherwise fall apart. This is where faith is refined beyond emotion. Because when nothing seems to shift, when prayers feel unanswered, when outcomes remain unchanged, the soul begins to ask whether it has been abandoned. But abandonment is rarely the truth behind silence. More often, silence is the space where unseen work is most active. Think of a watchmaker. The delicate work is not done in the marketplace where everything is loud and visible. It is done behind closed doors, where even the smallest movement has meaning. A slight adjustment here, a careful correction there, a pressure applied for just the right duration. To the outside observer, nothing appears. Ours to be happening. Yet within, everything is being held in precise order. So it is, perhaps, with the shaping of a life. There are moments when you are not being moved forward because something within you is being held in place. Something fragile is being strengthened without your awareness. Something unstable is being aligned so that when movement finally comes, it does not destroy you in the process. We often desire acceleration. We want answers that arrive quickly, doors that open immediately, clarity that comes without delay. Yet rapid change without preparation can become overwhelming. The soul, like a vessel, has limits to what it can contain at once. C.S. Lewis once reflected on the idea that what feels like delay to us may be the beginning of deeper formation. Not everything that feels slow is absent of purpose. Some things are being prepared in layers that the human eye cannot perceive. Consider how a deep foundation is built. No one praises the digging. No one celebrates. Ease the removal of earth, the darkness beneath the surface, the months where nothing looks beautiful. Yet without that hidden work, no structure could stand when pressure comes. In the same way, unseen preparation may be holding your life in a stability you do not yet recognize. You may feel unchanged, but you are not untouched. You may feel forgotten, but you are not unguarded. There is a difference between silence and absence. Silence can still carry intention. It can still carry presence. It can still carry protection working in ways too subtle to announce itself. There are dangers that are not removed by confrontation, but by prevention. They do not reach you because the path is quietly altered before you ever arrive. And because you never encounter them, you never realize what was avoided. This is where human perception struggles the most. We assume that what we experience defines reality. If nothing dramatic occurs, we conclude nothing significant is happening. But some of the most significant movements in life are the ones that leave no trace. A decision that never formed, a conversation that never occurred, a connection that dissolved before it deepened, a direction that changed without explanation. Each one may have carried outcomes you were never meant to carry, and yet, in the moment, all you feel is uncertainty. All you feel is stillness. All you feel is waiting. But waiting itself may be the evidence that something greater is being held together beyond your sight. Not every answered prayer arrives as arrival. Some answered prayers arrive as restraint. God does not only give, he withholds. And sometimes withholding is protection wearing the disguise of delay. There may be paths you will never walk, not because you were denied, but because you were delivered. There may be outcomes you never reach, not because they were impossible, but because they were unnecessary for your preservation. And one day, when clarity is no longer clouded by you, urgency, you may look back and realize that what felt like emptiness was actually fullness you could not yet recognize, and fullness you could not yet recognize. There are moments in life when loss feels like the final word. Something ends, something slips away, something you were certain would remain suddenly disappears from your reach. And the human heart, because it is immediate in its emotions, interprets this as harm. It assumes that what has left must have been essential, and therefore its absence must be damage. But time has a quiet way of revealing hidden mathematics in suffering. What leaves your life is not always measured by what it costs you, but by what it prevents you from carrying. There are things that arrive gently at first, almost politely, almost innocently. A relationship that seems harmless, a direction that appears promising, a habit that feels small, a decision that looks insignificant, yet within them there may be slow-growing weight burdens that do not reveal. Themselves immediately, consequences that do not show their face at the beginning. And sometimes what feels like loss is actually the removal of something that would have grown heavier than you were meant to bear. It is difficult to accept this in the moment because pain speaks louder than meaning. When something ends, it does not explain itself. It simply ends. And the silence it leaves behind can feel like accusation, as though you made a mistake, as though something has gone wrong, as though you were not careful enough. But there is another possibility, one that only reflection can slowly uncover. Not all departures are accidents. Some are interventions. C.S. Lewis often explored how human beings misread reality because they only see fragments of it. A broken piece of a larger design can look like chaos when viewed alone. Yet when seen in full, it may reveal a pattern that could not be understood in isolation. In the same way, what you call loss may be part of a larger defense you cannot yet assemble. Think of a person carrying a bag that becomes heavier with each passing mile. At first, the weight is tolerable. Then it becomes tiring. Then it becomes painful. But the person believing the contents are valuable refuses to let it go. If someone quietly removes an item from the bag while the traveler is distracted, the traveler may only feel the relief later, not the intervention at the moment it happens. So it is with certain removals in life. You may not have chosen them. You may not have understood them. You may not have agreed with them. Yet over time you may begin to notice something unexpected. Space where pressure once lived. Peace where confusion once settled. Strength where exhaustion once gathered. And then the question begins to shift. Not why did this leave me, but what was I being spared from carrying? There are futures that look attractive at the beginning but demand a cost that slowly erodes peace. There are paths that bright, but drain the soul in ways that cannot be seen until much later. There are connections that appear meaningful but quietly reshape a person into someone they were never meant to become. And sometimes, God removes what we would have clung to, not because it was worthless, but because it was weight we could not afford to carry into the person we are becoming. This kind of protection is rarely understood in real time. It feels like interruption. It feels like disappointment. It feels like something good has been taken away. But protection often disguises itself as loss until maturity arrives and changes the way memory is understood. There may even be moments when you look back and realize that what you once mourned would have altered your life in ways you could not have reversed. The very thing you believed was necessary may have contained within it a slow undoing of your peace, your direction, your stability. And what you called loss may, in truth, have been mercy refusing tea. Oh, let you collapse under something you could not yet see, something you could not yet see. And this is where the story, if we are honest, moves beyond explanation and into trust, because there will always remain a gap between what is revealed and what is hidden. Human understanding can trace only a few steps forward, while life itself stretches into distances we cannot measure. So the question is no longer only what was taken, or what was delayed, or what never arrived. The deeper question becomes whether you can believe that unseen care is still present even when visible evidence is absent. There is a strange courage required for this kind of faith. Not the courage that faces visible danger, but the courage that continues without visible reassurance. It is easy to believe in protection when the danger is obvious. It is harder when nothing appears to be happening at all. Yet perhaps the deepest form of protection is not always rescue from crisis, but guidance away from it long before it takes shape. C.S. Lewis once suggested, in his reflections on reality and belief, that what is most real is often what is least obvious at first glance. The visible world is not the whole truth, but only a surface layer of something far greater. If that is so, then your life is not confined to what you can currently interpret. It is part of a larger unfolding that you are inside, not outside of. And from inside the story, you cannot always see the author's intention. There are moments when you will not understand why certain doors never opened, why certain people left, why certain opportunities dissolved without explanation. But understanding is not always the requirement for safety. A child does not need to understand the storm to be led inside from it. Sometimes direction is enough, even without explanation. There may come a point where you realize that many of the things you once begged for would have required you to become someone smaller than you are meant to be, or so, eon harder, or someone emptier in ways you could not have recognized at the time. And so what felt like denial was actually preservation of identity. What felt like rejection was protection of becoming. What felt like silence was guidance operating beneath perception. Life has a way of rewriting meaning after enough distance has passed. The same event that once felt like collapse can later appear as redirection. The same ending that once felt like loss can reveal itself as quiet rescue. Not because the pain was imagined, but because the interpretation was incomplete. And perhaps that is the most difficult truth to accept. That meaning often arrives late, not immediately, not during the moment of confusion, but after enough time has passed for clarity to mature. Until then, you walk forward with partial sight, trusting that what is unseen is not absent and what is unknown is not uncontrolled. There may still be questions that remain unanswered for years. There may still be moments that never fully make sense in the way you hoped they would. Yet the presence guiding your life does not depend on your full comprehension to remain active. Even when you do not see protection, it may still be surrounding you. Even when you do not recognize intervention, it may still be shaping your path. Even when everything feels uncertain, it does not mean everything is unguarded. And one day, looking back with a clarity that distance brings, you may realize that your life was never without direction. It was simply being guided in ways you could not yet interpret while you were living it.